Hello. Hello. Welcome back to our
We're
show.
back.
So today we are talking about in-house versus agency production. What I think we are struggling with in the events world is figuring out who is supposed to do what. Now, over the last few years, we have event producers have developed experience and expertise in virtual and hybrid events. With me today is Anka Trifon of Tree Fan Events. Anka, I think my first question for you is when now that now that brands are coming back and they're creating in-person events, should they be hiring someone in-house, a full-time person to oversee those events? Or does it make sense to trust an external partner?
I feel like you just opened the can of worms right from the gate, Nick. So when I think of a in-house technical event specialist, in most cases, I think of a professional who is employed either by an organization or a venue to oversee and manage the technical aspects of an event. Someone that is most likely a generalist, as their main responsibility is to coordinate various technical details, such as audiovisual setup, lighting, staging, and other event production elements. Now, because they're a generalist, then that means they understand what it takes for the most part to put on an event. When I first started my agency, I remember I like to call myself a technical event planner for the event planner. My main role in the AV world at the time was as a sound engineer, so I could troubleshoot any technical issues related to sound, but I did not have much experience at the time when it comes to like video production,
Mhm.
so I could speak to it, but if I were put on the spot to troubleshoot something the day of because something was like, going up in flames, I didn't have the expertise to do that. So a
Right.
lot of the, technical event specialists that you're going to meet in those capacities are at that stage. They could talk the talk, but they don't
Mhm.
always walk the walk because they don't have the experience, they don't have the hours behind the
Yeah.
mixing board, the video switcher, or whatever it is to give you that expertise. So
Yeah.
whoever you're working with, make sure that not only can they talk general AV concepts, but they can
Mhm.
actually work those concepts into
Yes.
practice.
I think in my experience, it makes sense to have someone internal if you have a program that you run consistently, quarterly, something like that, to handle the brand side of representation, to handle the audience interaction, that kind of stuff. But you shouldn't necessarily expect that person to be a technical wizard, and certainly don't ask them to do that, because when you do, it's taking them away from what they really should be focused on, which is the success of the event, whatever KPIs you use to determine what that success metric is. Folks like Anka, folks like myself, or the team at Mainstream, we're doing dozens, scores of events every year. We're seeing a lot of different types of things, not just at the same venue, but like across the country. So we carry some of that knowledge with us to every new event.
And to add to that a little bit, I feel like it's not just the knowledge, but also which tribal knowledge is important, especially when you walk into a venue that potentially you have not worked in before, but also the partners that you
Mm-hmm.
build with some of the key players within that location, within that geographical place that you're going to. For me, that's super important because not only am I relying on my experience and my knowledge and expertise, but
Mm-hmm.
I have the partners that I know that they have my back.
Mm-hmm.
Because let me tell you, there's nothing worse than showing up somewhere and thinking that you have someone on your side, like an AV
Mm-hmm.
vendor, an AV partner that is there to support you, only to realize that no, they couldn't care less if your event goes well or doesn't. And that will hurt your bottom line. It'll hurt
Yeah.
you in long term,
Mm-hmm.
especially with that client that you establish rapport. Like it damages the relationship. So I've learned the hard way, even if this whatever AV vendor might be top
Mm-hmm.
of the line, if you don't have a pre-established relationship with them where you know that they're there to support you,
Mm-hmm.
then they might not be the right place for them to get them involved.
So, you know, there is frequently a conversation between internal versus external, right? When you go to a venue has its list of preferred vendors. Sometimes they have their own in-house vendors who are literally on site, and in some instances, it makes sense to leverage that staff, but it doesn't always, right? And I think that something that we were talking about in our kind of pre-show was how if you have an event at a venue, good friggin' luck trying to get a hold of your point of contact, like if you're a week out from your event, because they have 7 shows, for the 7 days prior to you, and they're just prioritizing what is right in front of them.
Exactly.
So, but you've actually, you've worked in venues before, you've worked kind of on both sides of this. So, and I don't want to just like disparage our friends who are working in the hotels. So like, what are situations that you see where it makes sense to leverage that in-house AV?
I think in most cases, and this is a very important question that you raised, I think in most cases, it's important to note that most in-house AV teams have typically a more general, well-rounded tech role expertise rather than a specialized expertise in the event production world. And for myself, I've worked with some amazing, good intentioned AV techs, but the in-house AV was there breaking into the AV world place, right? So they're very much green rookies, like level, like knowledge, not zero, but kind of like very close to zero, right? So they're learning from the bottom up. It's like I would have a team of guys that I would train for the in-house, overall support, and those were coverage guys, right? So I would have them, and I'm sorry I use the term guys because I'm very sensitive to that, because during that time of my life it was only guys, like literally I was the only girl and I was teaching these guys. Now I would have loved to have some gals around. So during that time, like they were learning from the ground up, like how to set up PA, how to ring a room, how to set up even a fast fold screen, like, oh, by the way, this is different than your cradle screen. I'm like, minimal level of understanding, right? So when does it make sense? I'm not saying that all in-house AVs have that level of expertise, because I've worked with some AV teams that really come from the event production side. But there is a level of difference between in-house AV, general AV, versus event production AV, right? When in the real world, when we talk about event productions, we talk about way more than just sound, screens, mics, and cables run this way or that way, or which placement is the screen gonna take, right? But also when it comes to the load, like of how much you do, a lot of the venues, they do small events that every so often they would have a large event, then they will put in their lead roles, some more of their expert, either if they have it on the payroll or maybe freelancers that they work with. But for the most part, you just go from event to event to event, that you're just going to set up screens and speakers and a mic. And maybe, now that we have virtual, we're going to have to stream this to Zoom or something, right? So there is a lot of like back to back to back to back. So it happens a lot where there's not enough labor, right? Assigned hands to take care of all the incoming that is happening at a venue level. So then there's this one person like sweating buckets. It's just running from place to place to get it done. And maybe if there's something to troubleshoot in this one ballroom, they might be able to come and help you, or hold off until I am actually free because I'm doing something else that's more of a priority, right?
I think at the end of the day, when you have that level of stress, when you have that level, that workload, it can be really challenging to commit yourself fully to the experience of one show and one audience. And I think that that's the thing that kind of drives me in the industry. And I was talking to another producer, AJ, last night, who it's the same thing. Like when we take on a show, you commit yourself to the show. You're going to do everything you can to make that show great.
When you're in the position of running an agency, every event is important, because that's what makes your brand and sets you apart from the competition. But also it's what builds your business.
Hmm.
I can't afford to be a, global organization like someone that I'm not going to mention the name of,
Hmm.
and be like, well, if we've, aft on this event, who cares?
Exactly.
But
It's not money out of their pocket, right? Whereas like if you or me mess up something real big, then we're gonna have to eat the cost of that in
was
some
there
way.
implication, the brand implication, the future client
Yep.
implication, it's like a lot of things are in the balance.
Hmm.
So it matters to me that I give my all to this one event today and another event tomorrow, or
Yep.
whatever it is that's coming, on my schedule. Everything is important. It's not just, oh, this is more important than the other one because actually it has a bigger, I don't know, budget or
Mhm.
whatever.
At the end of the day, like the client has to decide what's best for their show. We're going to use the venue in some capacity. You're going to use your external folks in some capacity. You're going to have in-house specialists who are working on things. So like what tips do you have for folks who need to collaborate with all of these disparate groups? How do you get those groups to come together to create an exceptional event?
It goes back to communication. I feel like when it comes to event planning, stellar communication has to be part of that recipe.
Hmm.
There is no event without being able to get everyone on the same page and being able to communicate your needs. Like, let's not, forget that, because many times you work with one person when it comes to the pre-event planning, and then you're like, okay, so who's going to be there the day of? Because that one person, are you sure they're being dialed in with everything that we've talked so far? And for agency like us, having a relationship with the partners that we work with and bring in, that is also very, very important, because like I said earlier, not having a good relationship in the sense of knowing that they have your back. And for me, loyalty, respect, having my back are super important as far as, when it comes to decision making, who's going to be joining on my event. All of those things are important ingredients to create that
Yeah.
experience, the event that you're looking to have.
A lot of times it can feel like you are in competition when you're working on a show, right? Like you have your AV folks over here and like they better not drop the ball because I got my stream over here and like they're responsible for, for all this stuff. And and that's just no way to run an event, right? I
That's what I mean when I say, do you have my back? Because if I'm
exactly.
here streaming this event and you need to feed me the audio, which is, has to be clear, the
Hmm.
video, the graphics, the camera angles,
Hmm.
as we're communicating to make this pancake, to make sure that all the, layers are put on right.
Hmm.
uh, if I don't have someone that's there to
Hmm.
support me, then we're, like you said, we're not only competing, but it becomes this struggle, power struggle of like, who is better than the other? And like,
Yeah.
no, we're here to work for the benefit of this one client. And there is none of that. Because
Yep.
if there's any sense of that,
Hmm.
that turns me off so bad.
Oh yeah. Something that I've started doing in the last year is I actually will at the at the start of our load in day, I will gather everybody from all of the teams. I'll gather the in-house AV, I will gather everyone that's on my team, I will gather the client, every single person, and get them to stand in a circle and get them to say who their name, like what their name is and what their job is on site. And just doing that, just that initial kickoff of like, okay, if I need audio, then this is the person that I'm going to go to. If I need video, like it's got to go over here.
Yeah.
Just establishing that at the very beginning really sets the tone for a collaborative experience with the entire organization.
Yeah, and especially on large scale events, this is so important, as you just mentioned, because, like, for example, I've worked on large events where we had over 300, 400, crew members, and many of those were hired locally from,
Mhm.
yacht party or a labor union. So you had no knowing of their capacity, of their skill set level. I mean, there's just a group of people that is there to support an event, and some are better than others, right? So like creating opportunities where they know who the lead is, where they know where to ask question, and they know what the hierarchy is, so that not
Mhm.
everything comes to this one person, when it can be solved, at the level of where they're maybe ballroom level. Like you have your leads for your ballroom, and then you have a lead for the floor that we're working on, then maybe escalate to me, if we need to go that far.
Mhm.
But it's, yeah, that communication, collaboration, also understanding that some people are better than others in certain roles. So like between yourselves, like feel free to, without obviously bragging and pushing and shoving, like feel free to say, hey, I'm really good at setting cameras. Like, that's what
Mhm.
I'm going to focus on, because I don't know, like from where I'm at, uh, should I put you to set up audio? And you're like, fuck, I've never actually set up audio in my life. Like, what am I? But
Yep.
I'm not gonna embarrass myself, so I'm gonna figure it out. But how much longer will that take you when I can just put someone that's actually an A1, in that
Exactly.
position?
Yep. Yep.
I think
Let
we can go
people.
on to this forever. So
I
yeah.
know. I know. No, that's good. We're getting some good questions in from the LinkedIn family. So one question is: my clients often hesitate to bring in an agency like ours because they fear pricing from outside AV outweighs the in-house options significantly. Do you also experience clients facing this fear? And I'll say from the start that, like, budget is always a conversation, right? You have to operate within what's reasonable for you and what's reasonable for them, and not every budget is going to fit your ability to do a job. That's okay, and I think that it's okay to say, like, listen, we're not going to be able to make this work. Now, that said, just because you're bringing in someone externally doesn't mean it's more expensive. A lot of times with external vendors, they have more flexibility with
Yep.
budgeting, so that they can figure something out, right? What's your experience with budget? How do you handle that conversation?
Well, I definitely understand the fear per se, right? But at the end of the day, also let's not forget that many in-house AV teams usually do include a service charge, which ranges anywhere from 20 to 30%. Like, do you, do you put that within your budget? So instead of maybe putting that to this service charge fee that is going to be added to your bill, regardless if you like it or not, how about you allocate that budget for the outsource partners that can offer more flexibility in cost negotiations, might have a lower overhead. That is something to keep in mind, which in most cases will result in cost savings for the event. And then another thing that I've actually experienced myself, I was working an event, a large conference on the East Coast, and we had a range of ballrooms that needed support. So we decided to hire the in-house AV to do the breakouts, which was
Hmm.
all these ballrooms. And then the general session was an AV production company, a separate third-party AV production partner that was going to support that. We spend so much money on the in-house, constantly needing to bring in extra people from different venues,
Hmm.
constantly needing to bring extra equipment that they didn't realize they need. I'm like, it was on the production schedule. What are you
Right.
talking about? Now I need to pay for the fee of you transporting equipment in between venues. And then also
Hmm.
one person doing the job, at a high level capacity is not the same as five people on the payroll doing the same job.
Yep.
Because then we just had to pay for all this extra labor to do the same thing that one of my production guys was like, get it done, get it done, get it done, right? And I'm like, I'm just paying all this extra money for the in-house,
Hmm.
where this could have been savings if I would have had a more expert crew, a more
Hmm.
organized, project manager, which was, from the
Hmm.
venue side. And it just was a headache. And I'm
Yeah.
like, lesson learned.
Yep.
Let's look at this differently next year.
Yeah, it's kind of like, thinking about a general contractor. If you're building a house, right? Like, can you hire the crew that's going to put in your windows and do your roofing and do the plumbing? Can you individually yourself as a homeowner hire the folks to do that? Absolutely. Do you have the experience to do it? If you don't, then like maybe you need someone who can actually handle that stuff, who's made those decisions before and can project manage the situation appropriately.
Absolutely. I love Jared. He says something. Oh,
Hmm.
yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. It's like
Hmm.
how he loves to, from the get go say, we are here to work together and we are friends, not enemies. And I'm
Hmm.
such a proponent of that as well. I want the in house to be on my side, right?
Yeah.
However, I'm also going to keep some strict boundaries as to what's acceptable, as to what's not, how long things should take to be done. Like if we're waiting for a ballroom to be set and it takes you 10 hours when it
Hmm.
should have been done in 4 hours, that's not acceptable in my book. Like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm not someone that is just going to let those things fly, but I want to be proactive looking at what we got ahead of us and make this happen for the benefit of the client without, having to like punch each other in the face by the end of the day.
Which I mean is going to happen at some point on some show. Someone is going to punch you in the face. Uh,
It
you know.
hasn't happened yet, but maybe I
Uh,
was close at one point.
yeah. All right. I want to hear that story the next time we do this. Stories of
I
getting
know
punched in the
that
face.
that is left for my book. That's gonna hopefully come out at the end of the year. So we'll see what
Oh,
happens.
okay. Nice. We got a book drop coming up. That's exciting.
Let's do it.
All
Yes. Oh
right.
my gosh. Trust me. Time for it is like, ah.
Yeah, I know you don't have enough on your plate already.
Yeah,
John over at Nimble Media, at Nimble Digital, thinks the general contractor
yeah,
analogy is a good one, which I appreciate
totally.
because I just pulled that out of my butt sometimes. So, I'm glad it resonated with you. But yeah, so I mean, let's kind of wrap this up here. Final thoughts about in-house versus agency. Um, Anka, if there's one piece of advice that you want to give to folks who's watching, what should they be looking out for? What do you want people to take away from this?
I think the main takeaway is, obviously you have to consider the experience and the expertise of the teams that you're working with. And in-house AV teams may, have had certain challenges to get hours and expertise during the pandemic, which is not that far behind because let me tell you, working 3 hours 3 years in virtual slash hybrid slash go back to virtual, it will give you a type of expertise, knowledge, skill set that being laid off, it just won't. Like,
Hmm.
that's the reality. Now, there's definitely some potential gaps that they might have had during that time. Not all teams are the same. Some of them, maybe they did work freelancing jobs on the side. So now when they came back to in-house, they're able to bring with them what they've learned. However, in my experience, outsourced AV production partners that still stayed around and worked, during the pandemic, during the craziness that was, most likely have accumulated the experience, the extensive experience and expertise in hosting not just virtual but also hybrid events, and it made them well equipped to handle the complexities that a lot of those events now have. A lot of the clients that I work with now, they have only put on virtual events during pandemic, and now they're completely like unprepared to
Mm.
what hybrid looks. So that's where we get to, uh, showcase the experience that we built over the pandemic, because not only did we do events pre-pandemic, but also we weren't just being still and figure out like I'm going to go and sell cars during pandemic or something. We
Some of
worked
us did,
it.
and there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
What I'm saying is selling cars. Yeah, sure, it might have helped my sales skill set,
there you go.
but not your technical per se
Yes,
skill set, right? So
yes,
it's important to take those things into considerations, just to throw it out there.
yeah.
And there's so many other things, obviously wanting to evaluate the technology capabilities, what are the cost considerations, specialization, expertise, relationship with that particular vendor. All of those are important in the decision making
Hmm.
when it comes to making your informed decision and asking questions, like making sure that you see those virtual events execution that now we have lots of YouTube streams to show for, right? Like, look at those, like do some research for yourself. Don't just jump into it because somebody said that this might be the right fit for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think really hammering on the expertise of your external folks, that's definitely a key takeaway. And I think the thing that I'm really hearing about this, from this conversation is communication. It is possible to have a great event when you communicate upfront, when people know who's responsible, when you physically identify the key stakeholders and the decision makers, and people know where to go to if they need help. But if you're skipping that step, then you're going to have a bad time.
I mean, having a bad time versus having to pay out of your pocket thousands of
Mm.
dollars for the bad time.
Well, I would call that a bad time.
That's a bad, yeah, that's pretty bad time.
That's a
So,
real bad time.
we want to avoid that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Anka, thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation. Really appreciate it. And I hope we get to do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, this was fun. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I hope that at least, I know it was Fast and Furious, and I might have dropped a few F-bombs. Sorry.
I only counted two, so we're still in the PG-13.
I was trying to be containing myself here, but
That's
don't
all
get me started talking passionate about something that I care, because
Listen.
things will just fly. Okay.
You want events people to talk, you're gonna get a couple of F-bombs. You're gonna have to deal with that.
You don't want to know what's happening behind the scenes. So this was actually the really tame version. Okay.
That's right. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll do this again sometime very soon.